Hello and welcome back to another weekly Bitcoin market update. As always, we're going to be looking at all the movements over the past 7 days in this video. But before we jump into things, please make sure that you hit the thumbs up button below. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit the bell notification icon. We are dropping multiple videos every single week, so you're going to want to stay up to date on all the latest news and movements in the Bitcoin and crypto space. So make sure you are subscribed. So without further ado, we're going to jump into today's video. And in terms of market updates, a lot of movement over the past 7 days or so in terms of market growth. Overall market cap is up on the week. So about 7 days ago, we were sitting at 1.66 trillion. We are now up to 1.78 trillion. So over $12 billion of inflow into the overall market. Lots of green going on in terms of price increases over the past week or so. A lot of green for most of the projects in the top 50, up in terms of percentages over the past week or so. That also means that the fear and greed index is obviously up a little bit on the week as well. So we are at a 72 on the fear and greed index, up from about 60 this time last week. So definitely a bit of an increase, but obviously as more money is flowing into the space, people are making moves to purchase more Bitcoin and more crypto. So what does that look like for the biggest movers and winners and losers over the past week? Well, obviously we've got a lot of green on this chart. We've got Bitcoin that is up just under 10% over the week, Ethereum up about 8%, BNB up just under 8%, Solana up 8%, Cardano up about 6%. So again, most of the top 50 are up, at least 2 or 3%, and then some of the bigger movers and some of the more blue chip top 50 are up 5, 6, 7, 8% on the week. Obviously, a few losers still in the mix here. We had that news about delisting of Monero on Binance during the week. So Monero is down on the week. Maker is also down and Aptos is also down. But the far majority are up on the week thanks to a lot of new inflow into the market and a lot of positive sentiment is getting traction as we approach the Bitcoin halving, which brings us to our next slide here, which is the Bitcoin halving countdown. We are only 62 days away now. This is obviously a moving target as we won't hit the halving until a block height of 840,000, but this is estimated to take place around April 12th at the moment. This could be a few days off, but as of right now, we are about 62 days away, or just over 2 months from the next Bitcoin halving event. We know, and you can check out some of the other videos on the channel for more details about the countdown and more details about the halving and the market movements that we expect to see in the 12 to 18 months after it. So be sure to check out those videos, but lots of positive sentiment building as we approach the Bitcoin halving. Next up, we've got Bitcoin dominance. So Bitcoin dominance is up once again over the week. Most of the inflow, or the capital inflow from the past week that is related to this growth of 12 billion into the market, I would say is attributed to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin dominance over the past week. So it will be interesting to see maybe some of this capital flow into altcoins over the next 5 to 7 days, but we are up from about 52% last week to about over 53.5% Bitcoin dominance this week. So Bitcoin dominance continues to rise, and again, it'll be interesting to see how much of that flows into the altcoins over the next week or so. Bitcoin stock to flow model, again, more for illustrative purposes, but what we have here is the kind of a countdown towards the halving date. So once we get to these purple colors, these colors represent the time from the halving. But again, just to illustrate the point that the supply shock that the halving event creates typically leads to an increase in the Bitcoin price, and it has mapped quite closely to the stock to flow over the past 3 halving cycles. So these dotted lines representing the halving events on the chart here. And as we inch closer towards the halving in April, obviously the supply shock with the block reward subsidy getting cut in half typically spurs a growth cycle and a bull run in the market. So it'll be interesting to see, how much of this growth Bitcoin can capture after the halving event. This brings us on to our Bitcoin chart for the previous cycles. And what we're looking at here is basically Bitcoin's performance from the cycle low to the cycle high over the past few cycles. So the blue chart here basically represents Bitcoin's performance in the first era, is what we're calling them here on the chart. But the first era is essentially the period in the immediate aftermath of the first Bitcoin halving. The orange line represents the period in the aftermath of the second Bitcoin halving, and the green line represents the Bitcoin price action in the third era, or in the bull run after the third Bitcoin halving. All the way over here on the left, you will notice the red line, and the red line is representing exactly where we are at here today in the fourth era as we approach the fourth Bitcoin halving. So day 0 is marked here in the middle of the chart, and what we notice here is basically from day 0, or at the time of the halving, we have, this parabolic growth essentially in terms of Bitcoin price in the 12 to 18 months after the halving event. So we saw that after the 2012 halving, we saw that after the 2016 halving, and we saw that after the 2020 halving. Now, the other thing you'll notice is there are somewhat of diminishing returns here with regards to that price performance. So in the aftermath of the 2012 halving, we have, crazy growth and crazy returns with the blue line. That was slightly diminished with the second era after the 2016 halving with the orange line, and then further diminished again with the third halving and the green line, even though it did outperform it in certain parts of that timeline. We've made other videos on this channel about the Bitcoin power law and how the diminishing returns may continue to occur after this halving. But the other thing to note, and the interesting thing about this particular halving, is this is the first time that we have much less Bitcoin supply available in terms of liquidity and the amount of Bitcoin that is available on exchanges. You'll notice if you look at some of the charts we've previously shown on the channel that the amount of Bitcoin and reserves available on exchanges has significantly diminished since 2020 and the 2020 halving. And we also had the recent approval of the Bitcoin ETF, which is creating a lot of demand in the market as well. So whether those things are priced in or not remains to be seen. But what we can see in the map here is that we are approaching the halving with the red line here, and every halving cycle before now has seen this parabolic growth in the 12 to 18 months, with new all-time highs being achieved in that 12 to 18 month period after the halving. So as we approach day 0, as we approach the Bitcoin halving in April of this year, we would expect to see a significant amount of growth certainly in the 300 days post-halving, but then also in the 12 to 18 months, putting in new all-time highs. As we have said many times on this channel, expecting that to happen around Q4 of 2025. So very interesting to see how this will play out, but definitely a good illustration to show the past performance of the previous 3 cycles, the previous 3 eras, and how that might impact us going forward. So we are inching towards the halving. Next, we're going to take a look at the altcoin season index. So obviously, thanks to the fact that Bitcoin dominance is continuing to increase, it's not altcoin season just yet. But looking at some of the top performers over the past month, we've got DAO and Sui still taking the majority share of that. We've got Link, we've got IMX, we've got Caspa, we've got Render, some of the biggest performers there. Tao and Sui obviously leading the way by a long way, but Bitcoin itself up about 2% on the past month, and then obviously some of the bigger losers down the bottom of the chart here with the likes of Monero, Aave, Near Protocol, Ordi, Quant, Injective, Algorand, Optimism, Ripple, etc., all down about, between 12 and 15 to 17%. So again, Bitcoin dominance is the story for the past month. Obviously, there are the outliers here with Tao and Sui, but it will be it'll be interesting to see the Bitcoin growth in the 90 days post halving, and then seeing some of that money begin to flow into alts. I think we will see a lot of changes here in the next 4 to 6 months. So interesting to keep on top of these different altcoins. And another way to stay on top of those is to obviously look at the different narratives that are performing well. And again, we've shared details about these different narratives on the channel in the past, but this resource here on Dune that's been curated by Crypto Correo, what we can see here is narratives month to date performance, and app chains, Bitcoin itself, layer 2's oracles, real yield, real world assets are some of the best performing narratives over the past month or so, or since the start of February, I should say. Some of the worst performers, we've got wallets, ordinals, liquid staking, derivative layer 2's. So again, worth keeping on top of these, especially thinking about the different assets that you hold in your portfolio and which narratives are those assets a part of. We have done other videos to kind of showcase how different narratives will peak at certain times during the course of the next bull run. So you're going to want to keep on top of the different narratives that your assets are a part of, and understanding how those narratives will have their day in the spotlight at some point during the next bull run, and how can you capitalize on that for yourself. Finally, last up, we've got the Bitcoin ETF tracker. So obviously there's been a large amount of inflow over the past few weeks with regards to the Bitcoin ETFs. We are coming up on almost a month of trading for the Bitcoin ETFs at this point. BlackRock are leading the way with about 78,000 Bitcoin that have been purchased as part of their ETF. Fidelity are in a very close second with about 66,000. Then we've got ARK Invest, Bitwise, Invesco that are kind of in this middle ground with about 7 to 16,000 each. And then VanEck, Valkyrie, Franklin Templeton, and Wisdom Tree making up the bottom four here in terms of Bitcoin that has been purchased over the past month. The other thing to note here is that we've got a total of over 190,000 Bitcoin that have been curated here, 192,253 Bitcoin that have been purchased by all of these ETFs, excluding Grayscale, over the past month. And we've touched on this previously on the channel, but basically the amount of Bitcoin that has been curated over the past month is certainly going to cause a supply squeeze if it continues to be purchased at that same rate. 192,000, I think that average, we've only had about about 18, 19 trading days. So this essentially equates to roughly 10,000 Bitcoin being curated every single trading day for the ETFs. And if we continue curating 10,000 Bitcoin every single day at that pace, there is definitely a big supply squeeze in store. So worth keeping an eye on this, worth keeping track of it. We can see the inflows of the ETFs mapped out here as well. But long story short, if we continue curating the amount of Bitcoin with these ETFs that has been curated over the past 19 days of Bitcoin ETF trading, we're going to see inflows between 50 and 100 billion alone from just the new US ETFs in 2024. And obviously a large supply squeeze incoming if it continues at that same rate. So as always, if you enjoy these videos, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button below. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll be giving you a market update every single week, and we will also be dropping at least 4 or 5 other videos every single week on the channel. So as we move towards the Bitcoin halving and as we kick into the main event of the next bull run, make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date on all the latest movements. Hit the bell notification icon to stay up to date, and we will catch you in the next one.